get my weight up to reflect the things that were instilled in me. Never give up. Some days I slip up, but I remember what my mama said. Baby girl, never give up. It's hard to be strong when the pressure is on at every end and the pain is prolonged. But dignity is always tugging at my sleeve, saying you must believe in you. That's how you make it through. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. All I want is dignity. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. All we're looking for, dignity. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. All I want is dignity. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. All we're looking for, dignity. Yeah. In the face of adversity, you and I must see.
Hello everyone, it's fantastic to be here at Slush. What an event, what an opening we witnessed this morning with all the fire, and now I guess we're at the black stage with water as the theme, and quite a nice fireside chat here we're having. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm here with my good friend Pekka, and we've been working on global dignity together for 10 years now, and it's been quite a ride, so we wanted to tell you about that. But as you heard, Pekka was the youngest PhD ever in Finland at the age of 20. When I asked him, so was that hard, was that difficult? He said, well, not that hard. I did the BA the first year, and then I did the PhD the second year, so not too hard. The amazing thing about Pekka is, even though he's thought so much more and is so much more intelligent than I am, he's still a good listener. So I think that's quite fantastic about you, Pekka. And also, you do things. So you heard this song where there's a theme of dignity in the song, and it's actually produced by Dave Stewart of the Rhythmics. So Pekka, why don't you tell us just quickly about how that came about?
Well, first of all, it is fantastic to be here at this great event with all of these great people around us. Yes, it was a surprising moment. Dave Stewart wanted to compose us a dignity theme song and invited me to his studio in Hollywood. And I got even involved in writing the lyrics for the verse. So that was a very surprising development.
Yeah, so a lot of fun things has been happening as we've been working on this project. So I wanted to take you back to an experience that I had in South Africa. I was traveling with a group of people, and we were doing a fundraising campaign for HIV and AIDS project. And we came to this township, very poor area outside of Durban, and I met a young woman called Matumbangal. And Matumbangal, she invited us into her house. It was a small house, more like a shack. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have a lot of income in this area. It was very poor. And you could tell that she was ill. You could tell from her energy maybe being a bit lower than what you would expect, and you could see it in her face because she had AIDS. Matumbangal was in an area where they did not have access to drugs. So when she got this message, she knew that she did not have long to live. So this was a really dramatic time for Matumbangal. And we were sitting there in her small house, and I thought, this girl, she has all the right in the world to be angry, to become bitter, but she chose differently. She chose to start doing peer groups. She got other people together that also were HIV positive, and they supported each other. They talked about their experiences, and of course there's a lot of stigma attached to being HIV positive in this community, and they could support each other and tell their own stories. And she did something maybe even more courageous. She started opening up, and she went to the neighboring villages and talked to people in meetings kind of like this, where she was open about her own status as HIV positive. and she talked to people about how they could avoid contracting the virus. Something that was very courageous, because it can actually be dangerous in those areas to do that. So I was very impressed by Matan Bungle, and she sort of became partly like a leadership model for me. I think it's good to reach for the stars, and I thought she was super impressive because she was in a very difficult situation, but she turned around and was focused on doing something positive for other people, even in that position that was so hard for her. So I, a few years later, went to a meeting organized by the World Economic Forum, and we got together and we talked about all these major issues of the world. So these were younger people from around the world, maybe 200 of us. We're talking about healthcare, education, environment and climate change, and we talked about poverty alleviation, etc. So we were doing that for 2 days, and everyone were making timetables and action plans. And then we started, a few of us started talking about, so what underpins this? What is it that drives us to want to make positive change? And that's when I met John, Hope Bryant, and Pekka here, and we started talking about that. And I told them the story about Matan Bungle. And we were talking about, so what is that? What is that source of positive change? And we agreed that dignity is something very core to that matter, and we wanted to operationalize that a bit. So we we put together a curriculum for young people to have a conversation about values, and it spread through this network we have in the World Economic Forum. So now we've reached more than 1.5 million young people around the world having this conversation, and it still needs to go on. So from that, what is it that drives people? That's something I was thinking about after I met Matan Bungle. And I think there's several things. There's definitely, at least for me, there's balance. That we find this balance, I guess, between work and our ambitions there. Family, both, if you have a life partner, maybe you have children, your close family, that's important. The social side, networks, like you have here at Slush, but also friends and people you know. And me, that you take care of yourself as well and what you want to do for your own good. So balance between those four. And I think also Dan Pink has a point when he says that autonomy drives us when we do things the way we want to do them. When mastery, when we actually learn, that's something that helps us drive forward. And also meaning. Meaning, I think, is the big one for me, being part of something bigger than yourself and something that's important. But Pekka, you have been writing about these issues. What drives us?
What drives us? Let me start by asking the question, what drives us at best in business? One of the honorary board members of Global Dignity is Richard Branson. And once he told us how central and critical it is, what your first question in life is. He said that if your first question is, how do I make as much money as possible, you are never going to make any money, said Richard Branson. But if instead your first question is, he said, how do I create something so valuable for others that I can be myself enthusiastic about it, it is much more likely that others become enthusiastic about it also. So the importance of the questions that we ask in life. So what drives us? Let me give an example. A few years ago, I wrote a book called The Hacker Ethic with Linus Torvalds, the creator of the Linux operating system. I consider Linux to be the most important thing ever created in Finland, and I mean this seriously. It is that our whole information age is running on it now, as most of the smartphones and the internet are using it. So the open source model that it is representing is globally transformative. When we were writing this book, I wanted to ask from Linus a question that had bothered me for a long time, that how is it at all possible that Linus, a 21-year-old student from Finland with no material resources, started the process that ultimately challenged the world's biggest IT companies? Linus answered to this question in a way that did not show the typical Finnish modesty. Linus answered, "This is about the new so-called law of Linus." And I was immediately excited because no one in Finland talks about himself like that. And I asked from Linus that what does this new cosmic law then contain, to which he told that it has 3 points, which is his understanding of what drives the Linux phenomenon and what drives people at their best more generally in our information age. And the 3 points, the first is survival, which is the most obvious one, more like a reminder that the need of winning the bread isn't disappearing in the information age. But if you want to understand the law of Linus in a deeper sense, you have to rise to its 2 higher points. And the point 2 of the law of Linus is the power of the social network. And what Linus referred to by this is a phenomenon we all know from our own lives, that how energizing and how achieving it is if you can feel that you belong to a larger community that is enthusiastic about the same thing and is also enthusiastic about the fact that you are part of this community. We all know the phenomenon that in some environments, thanks to its enriching environment, enriching interaction, where people help each other to go even further, rise even higher, you continuously surpass your previous level. You actually feel that in certain environments you are more than what you usually are. And Linus was saying that when this point is combined with the point 3 of law of Linus, the power of the creative passion, the third point, one of the most unstoppable cultures of creativity are born. And what he meant by creative passion was not something too pompous, but something that is a feature of all of us, not just a feature of some special people of some special group like artists. But what Linus meant was that you are creatively passionate whenever you are using your unique human potential in even slightly new and fuller forms. And again, he was describing a phenomenon we all know from our own lives, that in certain situations when you have this kind of connection in your activity, you also have a connection to your inner source of meaning and energy. And certain things actually don't just exhaust us, but energize us even more. And Linus was describing that these 3 points have been brought together in this law of Linus, which is now changing the world, as we've seen. Well, one thing I'm very grateful about is that I've had the chance to meet with many of these people who are making this revolution going on in the world. And one of the most special moments was I was asked to give a speech to the CEOs of the 60 biggest IT companies in the world, which was the group from Bill Gates to founders of Google. And for a long time I was wondering what should I choose as my title, until I came to the conclusion that there's only one option, namely the law of Linus. And I can report to you that Bill Gates was not especially happy about that. But actually he came to me after my speech to complain that how can you talk about some new law of Linus changing the world? Well, Larry Page was standing next to him, and as we have seen, Google and Silicon Valley have understood what the law of Linus is about. It is transforming our world. I want to link this to dignity. The law of Linus is another word for the culture of dignity, because dignity is basically about us all having something valuable inside of us and creating environments where this valuable thing in us gets better chances to get fulfilled. And if you want to approach this in in your own case, you can start by asking certain questions related to the point of creative passion. Ask yourself these kinds of questions. What is my creative passion? When am I at my best? What is my meaningful thing in life? Related to enriching interaction, ask the following types of questions. How am I in enriching interaction with others? How do I help others to go even further? How do I help others to rise even higher in their thing, not in my thing? And finally, remind yourself about the fundamental questions. What did I originally believe in life? What good I believed in when I started and that I may have a bit forgotten? That is, what do I want to be about in life? And in our dignity work, we've actually encouraged people to write this kind of a dignity letter to yourself, defining what you want to be about and for in life. So these thoughts are some of the thoughts that are part of also global dignity work.
Yeah, thank you, Pekka. It's fascinating. And I wanted to bring one more dimension to what drives us. After a few years of working on global dignity, we went to back to South Africa actually, and to a quite rough area outside of Cape Town. And this was in the time where there were quite a large influx of refugees coming from Zimbabwe, and some violence had erupted. There were gangs going around, and the refugees were very unpopular, and there was violence against them, and it was quite difficult times. And we were at this school in an area kind of like that, where this was happening. And a young girl stood up. She was probably 14 years old. And she said to her whole school that her aunt took in 8 refugees and harbored them while these gangs were roaming the streets to protect them. Now, this was a dangerous thing because the gangs would target not only the refugees, but also the South Africans that were helping them. I thought also the testament of the courage of the young woman that was standing there and the leadership she showed. Because obviously, or at least probably, some of the other students at that school might have been active in some of those gangs as well. But we have to stand up sometimes for what we know to be right. And this young girl was really showing leadership in sharing that story, and of course also her aunt that was harboring these refugees. And there's a deeper dimension to that. Why we're doing, where does altruism come from? This need we as human beings have to do something good, not only for ourselves, but also for others. And in lack of, I guess, a better term, I think what that might be is love. And I'm not talking about necessarily romantic love, even though that as well, but I'm talking more about our relationships and both the need to both receive, but also to give and show love. And there's that's sort of an underpinning driver, I think, for a lot of the good change that's happening in the world. What do you think, Pekka?
Yes, I agree. Ultimately, we are talking about love. Ultimately, our longing for dignity is the same as our longing for love. I'll tell an example of an 8-year-old boy that has moved me very deeply when I heard it. One day, this 8-year-old boy had been very, very sad. And then, at the end of the day, he was asked that, why have you been so sad for the whole day? To which this 8-year-old boy answered, because during the whole day, you have not touched me with your eyes. think about this image. Touch with your eyes. What a beautiful image for what dignity is ultimately based on. I feel grateful that I have been able to learn from all these children and the young and thinkers in the world on how the longing of dignity ultimately drives us. And if you want to kind of connect with these themes in yourself, possible questions to ask from yourselves based on what I've learned from these people include, have I touched other people with my eyes today? Do my living environments make my eyes shine? How do I make the eyes of the others shine? And ultimately, going to seeing that longing for dignity that is the most universal thing about human beings everywhere. Could I say to another person something that she has always longed to hear? Could I take another person inside of me and connect with her from there? And could I take the other person inside of me and return her to herself with more dignity? Practical thing you can do is start by writing a gratitude letter. Write a gratitude letter to a person that has had a significant meaning in your life, but you may not have remembered fully to acknowledge for that. You will see this longing dimension at work there. So these are some of the thoughts and experiences we've had around the world. And if you want to get to know what we are doing a bit in more detail, we encourage you to go to our website to see some videos and read some materials.
Thank you very much, Pekka. I'm going to actually move around a little bit since you were talking about how we look at people, and there's a lot of people over here that I've been not looking at so much. So I just wanted to say what a great privilege it is to be here with all of you. There's so many change makers here, and the CEO of Evernote, Phil Liblin, he said that there's a lot of bad reasons to start a company, but there's only one good, legitimate reason. And I think you know what it is. It is to change the world. So there's something there, and I think that goes for investing as well. So just to sum up, I think that we all here at Slush have this fantastic opportunity because the world is not only changed by the people outside this room, the world is changed by us here. It's up to you, and it's up to Pekka and me to do and make the change that we want to see. And I think that there's such a great prospect for that happening right here at Slush. And I think when we look back at our lives, we would like to really see and say that you know, the way I contributed and what I did actually did help the world move in the right direction. Thank you very much for your time and your attention, and it's really fantastic having us here at Slush. Thank you.
Thank you.